wasn't ready for this question.
Yeah.
When we initially decided on the topic, it was kind of like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to deal with that.
I don't want to open that box.
Yeah, no, that's a Pandora's box that needs to remain closed. But grief for me is more than just death. Sometimes you can mourn the loss of a friend or a partner, even the loss of yourself sometimes.
Public disclaimer, grief is normal. Welcome to this episode of Balancing the Bars, where we'll be digging into why grief is really a taboo, and do we really need it here in the 21st century, given that at some point in our lives, we're all gonna experience this big, scary bear that we call grief. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Abeena Gomes, and two gorgeous guests who have a pretty good insight on grief and how we can maneuver it moving forward. Now, let's start with Marva Langevine. She is a 2018 recipient of the Queen's Young Leaders Award, and she is a co-founder of the Guyana Golden Lives organization, which provides financial support and services for bereaved children, job opportunities for widows, and food hampers for low-income families. We also have Annie Gomes, who is a yoga instructor and founder, CEO as well, of Asana Athletics. She is a mother of two and wife to a popular Guyanese photographer, Arian Gomes. Welcome, ladies. Welcome down.
Thank you.
How are you feeling tonight? Let's do a vibe check.
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm hungry, but I'm good.
I feel you on that. They say skinniest people have the biggest appetite. Don't ask me where it's going. How are you, Abeena?
I am good. I'm good.
All right. So let's just dive right in. When we hear about grief, everybody goes running for the door, hits the closest exit sign. Why do you ladies think that is?
Because of our culture, especially in the Caribbean, grief, loss, death, it's very taboo. And people think that if you talk about it, it's going to happen to you, especially death. If you talk about death, it's like the spirit of death is going to come on you, you're going to die. But the fact is, death is inevitable. Every human being will experience grief because, as you said in the beginning, it's normal. Once you have an attachment to something, once you love something, and if you lose that thing, you will experience grief. It's a normal reaction to loss. But I think over time, based on various religions and superstitions and all those things, it just became a norm, whereas it is a taboo in Guyana and the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Death is universal, grief is universal, but just specifically here in Guyana and the Caribbean, people are afraid to talk about it, I guess because of our history and our culture and all these things. But I'm an advocate for grief support and grief work because if you don't deal with your grief, it can become a mental disorder or you may have a hard time moving forward with your life.
Yeah?
Grief affects you in the entirety. It affects your memory, it affects your appetite, it affects your concentration, and then even for some people, they feel like they're going crazy. And that's where we come in and we say, no, you're not crazy, this is normal, expect these things. In the next 6 months, these are the things that will happen to you. But just stay calm and find various rituals or practices or whatever it is to make you feel better or make you feel calm, etc. And make sure you have that community support to help you because it's like a drug. They say love is a drug.
Yeah.
And for drug addicts, if they want to stop using the drug, they have these withdrawals and all these various symptoms you might see manifesting. The same thing with grief. And I'm an advocate for bereavement, so I focus a lot on death loss. So if somebody loses a spouse, a father, mother, somebody that we're very close to, attached to, if that person's no longer there, you're gonna have like these withdrawals. You don't have this person to hug you. You don't smell them anymore. You don't hear their voice anymore. So that's gonna affect you mentally and emotionally. And the symptoms, as I said, you might have sleep disturbance, and especially in children, you might think they're acting weird, but that's just how they are expressing their grief. And sometimes you just need to let them be, give them their space, but also don't make them feel like they're lonely. Be around them to let them know that there are other people that are here for
That are feeling what they're feeling too.
And the thing is, adults are more expressive with their grief. The children are the forgotten mourners. So sometimes adults may not even acknowledge that they're grieving. Or even if they do acknowledge that they're grieving, they try to speed up the grieving process for them. Say, oh, stop crying, get over it, all these sort of things. So it's a lot of patience, a lot of active listening, and just finding the most appropriate support to offer.
So there is a psychological aspect that you're right. There's not a lot of emphasis placed on it. Annie, how has grief really shaped how you view the world today? Like, how has that twisted things for you?
Oh my goodness, grief did a lot for me. A lot of learning. But let me go back a bit. I think grief looks different on different people.
Indeed.
So like your fingerprint, everyone has their own, right? I think everyone grieves their own way. And for some, such as maybe myself, we can learn and we can grow and we can bloom and we can thrive and use it like soil. You know, be a seed well planted and just burst forth afterward. But that's not always the reality. For some people, the grief is the complete opposite. It's like burying them, literally. So it's not a seed and bursting forth and all these wonderful things that you always get. Sometimes you get the opposite. And so I'm saying that to say I was fortunate, blessed, thank God, thank the universe, whatever you want to say, for the opportunity to grieve and then to learn and to grow from it, from the process. And I think it had a lot to do with just my own natural disposition, the beliefs I had. She mentioned something about rituals. I have my yoga practice. And so I had something to ground me, to turn to for comfort, for support that was completely by me, for me, with me. Yeah. And so I was able to navigate through. But my heart absolutely goes out to everyone who might be in the position that's the opposite. I have no one. I have nothing. I have nowhere to go, and just these tons of feelings. What is happening?
Deal with.
Yeah. So I must say, I would love to give my story and offer it as hope and support, but I know the reality is it's not always that sunny and nice for most people. For most people, it's really raw and ugly and horrific. And so I've had moments, I'll say that to say I had moments where in my time of dealing with grief, by the way, I don't call it my grief. I believe we use feelings in a wrong kind of way. They will come and go.
How so?
They will come and go.
So you don't own
claim it. No.
Oh.
It has to flow. It has to flow like water. You can't claim it. You got to just let it come. I feel this now, but 2 years from now, I'm not going to feel this right now. Yeah. And that's the truth. In the moment when you're feeling things, you forget that. It's like, oh my God, the feeling, because it's that powerful. But the truth is, grief is a part of your story. It is not the whole story. So in my moments when I was going through grief, I had really dark times. I had times where, like she said, I really was convinced I was going to go nuts. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go nuts here. This is the way I'm going out now. And then because I was aware and had that connection with my breath and with my practice, I would always find a little corner and take a few deep breaths and say, you know what? This too shall pass. And treat it like waves on the ocean. Okay, wash in, wash out. Wash in, wash out. At some point in time, the tide will go out and it will be calm on the waters again. And I think, if anything, the grief has taught me is that seasons will happen. So don't get stuck on any one season. It's going to change and something else is going to happen. And so there's always that sense of hope. And no matter how bad or how down or how winter it seems right now, spring must come at some point in time.
Indeed.
Woohoo for summer.
Cue the tears.
That is so true. Cue them right now. My aunt, I hope she's resting in power.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I know, because she's a badass.
She is.
And she would always say that nothing in this life lasts for long. And it may seem sad, but really and truly it's not, because the good doesn't last for long. The bad comes along, and it gives you a wake-up call to, hey, this was the good I was experiencing, you know? And it also teaches you things that the good times could never teach you. So she has this thing where the good and bad, they come in like a yin-yang cycle.
What they do?
And grief, I've learned, helps you to see life the way it is. So, Abeena, how has post-grief helped you see life differently?
I wasn't ready for this question.
Yeah, sorry.
When we initially decided on the topic, it was kind of like, yeah, I don't want to go there. I don't want to deal with that.
I don't want to open that box.
Yeah, no, that's a Pandora's box that needs to remain closed. But grief for me is more than just death. Sometimes you can mourn the loss of a friend or a partner, even the loss of yourself sometimes. But I think the biggest hit for me over the past 5 years or so has been the passing of my grandmother. Like, it was so unexpected. And I think that's when it's much harder to process, because you're thinking that you're going to grow up and this person is always going to be there. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, this is not how it's supposed to happen. I remember the day that we found out that she died. Someone, because she was in Wakenham, someone called and they said, we took your mom to the hospital and she passed. My mother, like, she didn't process what was happening. So she came into my room and she was like, your grandmother died. I was like, wait, what? Like, how she said it, there was like no emotion attached to it. And I knew in that moment, like, she herself didn't come to terms and she didn't understand. And when she told me, I was like, wait, what? My younger sister laughed because she thought it was a joke. It wasn't. And even while we were in the boat going to Wakenham, in our minds, we were all thinking, because my grandmother loves attention and she does weird things for attention. But I guess she just wanted to feel that love. So in our mind, we were all thinking, man, it's just something to get all of us to come to Wakenham. And when we got there and we got to the hospital, we were all still expecting, like, for her to come out and be like, yeah, hi, thanks for coming. But when they pulled out and we saw her, like, laying there, it was like, oh, this is happening. But in that moment, none of us could have been upset because there was a smile on her face. And we knew that she was fine with the decision and she was fine with what happened. And we couldn't be angry about it. I don't think I've been able to process it. And there's still times where I'm always wondering if there's more that I could have done, or there's more time that I could have spent with her. But the ritual is just trying to remember all the good times when she would clap my roti for me. One thing about her, when you come home, it's like you eat. When she come from waking up, we want. She would always bring the mangoes and the plantain and everything else. So that has actually helped with the process. But it's still something that I'm learning to grow from. I don't think I could deal with another death of a family member because it's like, can't do it.
The roots run deep. Yeah, the roots run deep, and you never expect it. So, haven't dealt rather with people being plucked out of your lives and seeing other people experience it. What do you really say to someone in that moment? Because in the Caribbean, like you said, when your mom came, she didn't register that this really happened. I remember when my aunt died, I was like, I couldn't have been 12 yet. And they came and they just kind of dropped it in your lap, like, okay, this is what happened. And I don't think that we have a culture of addressing death in any
with it.
Yeah,
per se.
in any way. So it's kind of like, okay, this is it. Let's push forward. It's like as soon as someone you love dies, it's like, okay,
what next?
Yeah,
we
the
need
funeral,
to plan,
and then let's
the wake, plan the funeral, and then
it.
pick up after.
So what's some advice you have for maybe a viewer who got dealt that rough card when someone they love left their lives, and also maybe someone watching who is guilty of treating it in such a harsh manner?
Yeah, because we don't talk about death or grief or loss, we don't know how to comfort somebody who's grieving. Many people feel uncomfortable offering support. And those who are brave enough to offer support, they oftentimes end up saying something to make the matter worse.
Much worse. You can
Like,
say that
oh,
again.
God knows best.
Literally.
Yeah.
Oh, she's in a better place.
place.
Ooh,
Oh,
like, how do you
things.
know that?
Like,
Ugh.
people are very upset when people tell them these things. But I guess we grew up hearing it, so we just repeat it. And they, oh, my condolences. And it ends there. Condolence can't do nothing for me.
At that point.
I tell people condolence. I mean, you mean well, but go beyond my condolences. And that's where I come in, to say, like, these are the things you can do. Because I believe in Guyana, we're so focused on moving on from grief than moving forward with our grief. So there's really nothing you can say to somebody. When somebody experiences a death loss, they are in shock. They're not thinking straight. A whole lot of things going on with them. But you can just be there for them. You can sit with them. I'm not saying to not go and say my condolences anymore.
Yeah.
You can still say that. But what are you going to do after? What are the tangible things or even the intangible things that you're going to do for that person that you love to make them, to reduce the pain that they might be feeling? I like to hug. Unfortunately, with COVID, I can't do too much hugging right now. But give them a hug. Sit with them. Lend a listening ear. And I feel, especially as Guyanese, we don't listen. Like, we always want to say to make them feel better. There's nothing you can do to make them feel better. They will feel better over time once they have that support and once they have the tools and the skills to process and cope with their loss. But I encourage people to just be there. If you could just sit with them. If you just go to their house, wash the wares, wash the clothes, take care of the kids.
Yeah, it's the small things.
Yeah, if you could just say, sometimes it depends on the situation. You need to know who the person is. You can say, if you need anything, you can let me know. But most people would not let you know what they need. You just have to be observant and say, okay, I'm gonna bring groceries this week. I'm gonna give you this money if it's funeral arrangements. I'm gonna do this, that. Like, you take the initiative to do things, because once the death is fresh, especially, the person is in their own world and they don't have the energy to do anything. And then some people are uncomfortable asking for help as well, so they might not say they need help. So you offer something to them. With children, the best thing you can do is to just pay attention to them and don't jump in and try to comfort them. Children are very different, especially adolescents. Give them their space. Introduce them to things that can help them to cope. If it's listening to music, writing in a journal, exercising, various practical things that they can do to help them. And another thing is to not be alarmed, especially with children. Sometimes you might see them being very happy and playing, and be like, what's wrong with them? Like, they should be crying and sulking in a corner. But children don't stay in one place with one emotion. There's so much for them, so they might feel it all at once, and then the next hour you see them running all jolly, like, oh, daddy didn't die. But that's normal for them. That is, their brains are still developing, they're still growing. For adults, if you see that for the mental health professionals, if after 6 months they're still in that dark place, that's when you need to get professional help. And that's where psychologists, trained mental health practitioners will come in and do various therapeutic sessions with them to help them to process and cope and to move forward. Not move on, but move forward, because they still have to go back to their day job. They still have to probably look after their children, and they still have to be present. And it also depends on the type of death as well. I mean, I've dealt with people who have experienced their parents being murdered. Like,
that is actually something really, really, it hits home. So
yeah, so that's traumatic.
Yeah.
So it depends on the type of death. If it's a traumatic situation, of course, they're more prone to depression, PTSD, and other mental health disorders, and that's where you need professional help. But you just need to have the facts, know the type of relationship the person had with the deceased as well, because some people had a strained relationship. So you need to just get the facts together before you even take a step in terms of offering support, because you might be doing more harm
than good.
So just get all the facts together. There's the internet. You could go online, anything you need. How to help a friend whose father would have died, and Abeena. it's Abeena, right?
Yes, you got that correct.
Abeena talk about the other losses. Like, yeah, every day we lose. Like, there's so many losses in life. Loss of a job, especially with this pandemic. People have lost jobs. People have lost family members. People have lost their homes. With the floods, people have lost their crops, and these people are
Yeah,
grieving.
even recently.
You know, people are grieving. So it's all about community support and people just paying attention and knowing how to really take the first step in terms of offering support. Because if somebody lost their job, they don't need no hug from me.
Yeah,
We got to find a
definitely.
job for them where we need to put systems in place to ensure that they have groceries or have their bills paid for the next 3 months and all these sort of things. So practical support and just being in tune with the needs of the individual.
Then the saying is indeed true when they say it takes a village to raise a child, but you never really do stop learning and growing and developing. So you always need people as much as we may or may not want to embrace that. So ladies, a wealth of knowledge just flowed on this table this evening, but I do want to know, is there a piece of advice that you want to give just before we wrap up? Annie, how about you? I put you on the spot, girl.
Oh, my piece of advice is, remain true to your authentic self. And once you are true to your authentic self in a loving, caring, kind way, just follow suit on that path,
Yeah.
regardless of what others might say.
I think that's vital. That's vital. And I love the points that you put forward, Marva. But just one more thing. Is there a hotline that you can share or maybe even a ministry that would help? Because we know that there's a lot of crazy things that's happening every single day in our country. And sometimes people don't know where to turn. Just the other day, a couple houses down from me, a young man saw his mother murdered. So like I myself was trying to figure out where are some places that I can go that I haven't already gone that would treat this young man with the care he needs. So can you help our viewers on to some plugs for good mental health?
Yeah, specifically for grief or bereavement,
Yeah.
my NGO is the only NGO in Ghana that does that. So that's Guyana Golden Lives Organization. But as I said, if they need professional help, that is when I would make a referral. I have
That's
remember.
okay.
So
But what you can do
you
is
can
give us
message Guyana Golden. So if you know
Yes.
a child who would have lost a parent or a loved one and you think that they need support, you can reach out to us, Guyana Golden Lives Organization. You can send a message to our Facebook page or you could call this number 671-3996.
awesome.
Yeah, so we
And it
deal
is-
with bereaved children. We provide mentorship, support, whatever it is that they need.
It is truly needed in our country. So kudos to you for that and all of the members of your amazing team for pushing that mentality forward that we can heal. And even though the grief might not magically disappear, you are going to heal from it. So if you're locked in right now to Balancing the Bars and you enjoyed this conversation, leave a comment below. We can bring these ladies back for you and we can talk about some more things because it is not taboo. Like we said, we made that public disclaimer. It is natural and normal to feel these emotions. And thank you so much for laying it out so perfectly because it needed to be heard. And I'm happy this happened on this episode of Balancing the Bars. Abeena, thank you for keeping it real as well. And thank you, viewers, for fueling us and helping us to bring these genuine conversations to you. See you next time. We're here at Balancing the Bars, where balance brings peace.